Welcome to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Jana. This is our weekly venture into the world of small to medium-sized businesses and the entrepreneurial spirit that drives success.
So our goal here is to help you grow and to be the best you can be, both in business and personally. To do that, we identify and we discuss topics that will hopefully help you as you work to build a successful business.
We also interview business owners and executives. It's our hope that you may be able to gain insight on ways to help you be a better leader and provide a better culture for your people.
Our mission here is to help you pull the chute once a week to work on your business instead of always working in your business.
So we hope you find these discussions insightful, helpful, and useful.
And thanks for your support. We hope you enjoy today's podcast.
Well, welcome everyone to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Jana. We are so excited that you're here as always. Jana, how are you doing today? It's a Monday for us.
It's a Monday, but at least it's a beautiful Monday here in Nashville.
Yes,
I know we always talk about the weather and, that's the big thing from summer to fall, but yeah, we've got some nice weather.
Yeah, it's great.
I hope you all do out there too.
Yeah, well, these shows always drop on a Wednesday, but we record them throughout the week. This is a crazy week. We were just talking, we have 7 interviews this week, which is exciting for us. That means our show is finally gaining some following and things of that nature. Jan, I'm excited today because we have a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Bennett with us. And he's works with and coaches CEOs and C-suite level leaders. And I just want to hear more about what he does and how he does it. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jeff. It's great to be here. Hi, Jana.
How are you? And you're in Ontario, Canada. Way up there. Yeah, sure.
Yay.
I love it.
Well, Jonathan, the way we like to do things is just do us a favor for our listeners. Just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you're at today. And then we'll kind of go from there. I'd love to learn more about what you do and how you go about doing it, because it's always fascinating to me. Everyone has a little bit of different spin on things sometimes, and that always opens our eyes to new and exciting things. So give us the background.
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of began my work life in communications and marketing, that kind of stuff. And I kind of worked my way up, and I found myself on the senior team of a huge regional hospital here in Canada. And I sort of described that experience over the course of those 7 years as like getting 3 free MBAs. We built a huge new hospital. We demolished a series of other hospitals. We merged 2 together. I made it through 3 CEOs. Oh. And at the end, I was just exhausted. Like totally exhausted. I had been, getting there at 6:45 before rounds to meet with doctors and leaving at 11 o'clock at night after the last of the audit and finance committee members were, toddling out after a 4-hour board meeting. And I was just done, so spent. And I knew I needed to do something different with my life. So I quit and I hung out a shingle and I decided, how hard could this management consulting thing be?
Right.
And turns out pretty hard, actually.
Yeah, we know.
I started a company, and over the course of the next 10 years, grew and scaled that company. We were largely a strategy shop, but we also got into some really interesting middle management training. We became a B Corp, which I always love talking about being B Corp. And it was an amazing ride. About 3 years ago, I sold the company to one of my colleagues. So it was a management buyout. And these days, I'm an executive coach. I help leaders that have been where I was at various times.
Yep.
I do trusted advisory work. I still do a bit of strategy work. And it's great. I get to serve the leaders that really, sometimes it can be kind of lonely being up there by yourself. And I'm really grateful for the kind of intimate work I get to do these days.
Well, I love that. So I got to go back to a B Corp. In the US, we don't call them B Corp. So what is that in Canada?
Yeah, so you do actually have them. It's global, and it's kind of an external certification around corporate social responsibility. So imagine it's been around for maybe I guess I'm going to say maybe like 15 years, 20 years or so. It's really gaining some momentum here as people start to think about the environment, about social purpose, about doing business as a force for good. Employees care about working for companies that care about them. And maybe we want to make money, yes, but we also maybe want to be light on the earth and or just treat one another with respect and dignity. And so companies that become B Corps get certified to these very kind of high standards, and it's a very rigorous process. But once you get in, it's kind of incredible because you meet this whole community of other corporations and other leaders that are, that kind of care about the same things that you do.
That's interesting, Jonathan. So give me 3 things that are required for a B Corp, for example. Like what, I know, I mean, that's simplifying it quite a bit, but just for our listeners, like what?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I should say, like, these are for-profit companies that can become a B Corp. And you would know some of them, like Ben and Jerry's, for example.
Okay.
The global yogurt company, Danone, is a B
Yes.
Corp. Allbirds, they're a B Corp. So there's some kind of famous Patagonia are sort of famous companies that are B Corps. But there's something like 8,000 companies. Most of them are pretty little.
Yeah.
So some things you need to pay like a living wage. So that's different than minimum wage. There's calculations that get done in every jurisdiction around the world about what it's like to make enough money that you're not going under. Because we have this idea of kind of like what it's like to be in the working poor. So you have a job or maybe 2 jobs, but you still can't make ends meet.
Sure.
So there's a kind of threshold level that's called a living wage. And so B Corps tend to want to pay and have to pay a living wage. The other is being able to meet strong environmental standards in your industry. A consulting company has a very light touch, but a manufacturing company, for example, have supply chains, complex, maybe industrial processes, all of which get reviewed and get kind of like adjudicated. And another is governance. So how your organization is structured and owned. B Corps, so you don't have to be employee owned, but boy, you get good score if you have some employee ownership, because when an employee base have an active ownership in a company, can mean their attachment to the company is deeper. So they're just 3, but there's literally kind of like hundreds of data points over the course of the scoring, and it's rigorous. I mean, it takes most people longer than a year to kind of get through the certification process.
That is very cool. Now, again, that's something I ever heard of before, so I love it, and it's right in the wheelhouse of what Jen and I talk about all the time, which is, I mean, you basically what it sounds like is you're having them develop a culture that is supporting of their people and the environment,
And healthy.
Yep.
Yeah.
and healthy.
And
Yeah,
healthy.
just all these really, I love that. I think that's amazing. It's amazing. So Jonathan, as you're coaching, let's jump back into what you're kind of doing now. Thanks for that explanation. Appreciate that a ton.
Yeah.
But when you're coaching now, so like you're coaching at the CEO level, the C-suite level, what do you see as one of the biggest hurdles that they run into? What's one of their biggest struggles?
Mostly it's people, right?
Yeah.
Mostly it's people management. How do I get my folks to do the things? There's lots of generational conversations that happen right now. I have lots of Gen X, like I'm a Gen Xer, and I have lots of people that are around my age. And it starts like, why the hell don't they know how to work hard anymore? And why don't they care like I used to?
Oh my gosh.
And so it comes up all the time. And so I think sort of 2 things are at play there. The workforce has really changed. What people want in their work and what meaning is in work has changed. And so it took a long time for folks that are in their 50s to get to the corner office. They had to wait a lot longer than other generations have had to wait because there were so many boomers who hung on for so long. And so by the time they got there, they were pretty eager to get at it and get at it hard. But what's coming up behind them, a whole generation of folks that want different things at work.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I get into is when I'm like dealing with that level of frustration or that misalignment of values, or what feels like a misalignment of values, it often isn't, but it feels like it, is I'll often go back and ask for an origin story with that leader. Like, okay, so that seems important to you, that people are at the office and working hard, or that go at this particular issue in this certain way. Where did that come from? Where did you learn that? and they'll tell me a story about an early boss, an early mentor that they had. And so this person might have been an influence in them, in their lives in the 90s.
Right.
They may or may not even be alive now. Like, that's what we're talking about. That's how much time has passed. And so what if I sort of suggest to them that, maybe the advice that they've carried around that's really informed their career and helped them get to where they got to is no longer good advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, what if culture and society and the business world has changed enough that really precious, important person to you that is still speaking they're still occupying rent free in your head, telling you how to do stuff, aren't actually giving you the right advice anymore? What if that's just moved on? It used to be true, but it's not true anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And allowing people to kind of investigate those sorts of things that they hold near and dear to them, and allow some of them to just sunset. Some of it is ageless, no doubt, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some of it can be time limited, and that can help people just begin to close the empathy gap and understand what it's like to be a young worker in today's world. They're carrying massive amounts of student debt. Housing is far more expensive as a component of what your wage was than it was for us. And so, and they don't own the company, you do, and they're never going to care as much as you do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you mix all those things together, maybe they're not staying late. And what do you do about that? Like, just banging your head against it isn't obviously the solution. So we're able to kind of unpack that a little
And what do you
hopefully
tell
find
them,
some new
Jonathan? I
ways.
mean, Jeff and I deal with this a lot. It's interesting. I was just going to say, this is so much of what we have been hearing the past several months, Jeff and I, in working with and talking to and interviewing coaches. And it's a lot of this multi-generational and a lot of this communication and the old way. We've really shifted quite a bit in the last 20 years in business. So what do you say to them then, to these C-suite people, these C-level people, the owners? How do we break down some of this and rethink it, or what solutions do we give them?
Well, I think firstly, to think that they don't care or that they're somehow less invested is wrong, and they're just looking at it in a different way. I mean, I was literally on a call with a kind of like upper manager who's a millennial, and her level of commitment to this job was unfathomable. But she carries so much anxiety, so much deep personal accountability. She's struggling with core things like delegating, like not swooping in and being a hero and saving the day. So, I mean, that's not a leader and an emerging leader who's struggling with commitment. They're struggling with setting boundaries. They're struggling with performance management.
Right.
And so, I kind of like, when I'm working with founders, I'm like, they do care. They do care. You just have to close the empathy gap. You've got to meet them where they're at and listen more deeply and show up with a lot more curiosity, because they need your help. They just want you to think they're amazing. And so they keep everything a secret. They don't want to disclose anything. They're all like, especially folks that are kind of rising in the ranks, they tend to be, just like high performers and A-types. And they want to be seen as being amazing and perfect. And they're not, and they're not, and they know they're not, and you play this dance and this game around it. And so, you be the leader in this situation. Like, show up with them, get curious, be safe, and allow them to start to communicate with you in a way that's going to open them up and allow them to be vulnerable. And from there, you've got the ingredients to make change and to help them get to that next level.
So I find it interesting the way you brought up, how they work, or if they're at the office. I got in a conversation recently with a business owner that he has 2 remote workers, and his struggle is that they're not always at their desk during the business hours.
Right.
And I said, and my question to him was, well, the remote, are they getting the work done? Oh yeah, no, they're doing a great job. Do you feel good about what you're paying them for the amount of work that's getting done? Yeah, I think so. But they can't get past the fact that they might not be at their desk like they were in the office, if they were in the office, and he's struggling with that. Have you come across that, and how have you worked around that?
Yeah, yeah, that comes up all the time because that's how we were trained.
Right.
Bums in seats, right? Like if I can see you, I believe that you are doing your work. Well, we've just been through a global pandemic. We've just totally changed the tools that we have
Right.
to run our businesses. We have these tech stacks and we have all of this communication, that allows people to work remotely, and it allows us to hire people from all around the world and allow them to feed into our teams. And so I think it's just a time of transition for owners, and to just allow themselves, like, where you were going with them, Jeff, is like, there's not really a problem here. The problem is your framework. It's your
Correct.
mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, when I'm in those things, like I just try to help people find a way in to gently kind of open them to the idea of, are we focused on the process? Or are we focused on the outcome?
Yeah.
It looks like you really, really, really want to control the process and you're happy
Mhm.
enough with the outcome. What if the process just looked different for them
Yeah.
and you were still getting the outcome you want? What if you relaxed on the process even more and the outcomes got even better?
Yeah. I know.
Well, again, we talk about this a lot, Jeff, and it has to do with trusting your team, making sure you put the right people on the team and make sure they're in the position that they want to be in. And then they have ownership or they have investment because they're passionate about it, or it's something that they want to do. So I totally agree with that. It's so interesting how we all kind of see these things. We're just saying them a different way, but it's all bound to the same thing of, listening to your employees, caring about your employees, because they wouldn't be there if they didn't care, most of the time, 90% of them. But it is
Oh, for
interesting how the
sure.
semantics change, but it's the same goal that we all have in mind,
Yeah, it reminds me, this conversation reminds me of a story. So as I was growing my last company, I was on a business trip, and folks were kind of back at the ranch, and I was getting some weird texts as I was like going in for a lunch. And I was trying to understand like what was really happening, but clearly something was happening. And in the middle of my lunch, I was like, can you just hang on a second? And I like reached back into my phone and I'm like, help me, what is happening? Do I need to jump in here? And they're like, no, 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 everything's fine. Everything's fine. All that happened, Jonathan, was that somebody's sick and they needed to stay at home with their family, and somebody else got subbed into a project, and now a different person has to go and fill in for the other thing, but don't worry, it's all sorted. And so I apologized to the person I'm having lunch with and said, sorry, and this is kind of what happened. And like, I'm like, so anyway, we're all good. And he looks at me and he says, no, 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 no. He says, like, you have a self-organizing, self-correcting team. This is like as high a bar as you can get.
Mhm.
Don't gloss over this because it might not stay this good.
Yeah.
You should enjoy this moment. And I was like, oh, wow. And I just never really forgot that, because if he hadn't called that out, to me, it was like, yeah, I built a company that had a deep trust and amazing people, and they just got shit done, and they organized each other.
Mhm.
And but he was right. It wasn't always that, and it didn't stay always that either. We ebbed and flowed in terms of our cohesion and trust, because people change and dynamics change.
Sure.
So I come back to that story fairly often. I come back to that moment fairly often because, yes, we're aiming for that, and that can exist in any workplace, Jeff. Like it can be virtual, it can be hybrid, it can be in person. High trust environments are a gift, and when we manage to create them, hanging on to them feels like everything that we should be thinking about doing, not taking it for granted. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and listening, I think, is also the key, because the whole goal is for it to be a high trust. That's, Jeff, oh my gosh, we talk about this all the time. If you don't have trust from the C-suite team down, people aren't going to be invested. They smell it, they sense it. So the trust is a big deal, but that's interesting that you say that it ebbs and flows. Of course it does, as all business does, but you've got to go for those high level elements first, which is communication, trust, and kind of letting your team feel like they're invested somehow, whether it's just through clear communication, free communication, like you said, times where they would have to work at home, but they're still going to get their work done. All of these kinds of elements, because it has changed so much. than it used to be, where you had to be at a job for 40 to 60 hours a week, or
Yeah.
people didn't think you were good.
Well, and Jonathan, you said
Totally.
something that's interesting to me, and you said, look, it's not easy to do that, to build trust. We're all hoping to get there,
Yeah.
but it's not easy to do that. What are some of the companies that are actually out there what are they doing right when it comes to this to make it work? Because I know there are companies that are making it work. What do you think they're doing right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that companies that have really calm workplaces, that have clear processes and systems and strong structures, so people know what it is to do a good job and people can meet expectations, that tends to create a lot of calmness and trust in organizations. Companies where they're fighting fires, where everything feels urgent, where everything's obscenely deadline driven, that are run by leaders that like to be a hero and swoop in and save the day, or who are phone throwers or whatever else. Like none of that is going to create a high trusted environment. They can sometimes be environments that are exciting to be in, but they're not sustainable.
Right.
And so you often see it in startup culture. These, we're all in and we're just doing it, and it's like so intense and all that. But those things, those companies and those moments that they create are like a sprint. I mean, they literally call them that.
Yeah.
And so and they're not sustainable for the long run. And I think high trust environments are actually quite predictable. They're quite calm.
Mhm.
And people like, I know I'll be in a high trust environment. There's like some canary in the coal mine type things that I look for. Really strong onboarding.
Okay.
Companies that take a lot of time and care with onboarding is really important. I think that's true because an employee's origin story is one of the things that they hold dear. And the reason is because when they're attaching to a company, they're very, very vulnerable.
Mhm.
Did I make the right mistake? Did I make the right choice? Did I make a mistake?
Right.
Is it safe around here? Are they really as nice as they seemed in the interview? What happens once the honeymoon period wears off and
Right.
they start holding me accountable? Am I safe? So I think we think about onboarding and orientation as something that takes, like 2 weeks. Like, here's the manual, here's your pass, shadow so-and-so for a day. Good luck.
Yeah.
And they drop you in and they drop you in the deep end. I think companies that have an onboarding think about it like a year. And if you think about it like attachment theory, like we do with little kids, like babies and stuff, like it takes a long time for you to fully attach to a new workplace. And one of the things that I always look for is at some point around like between month 3 and month 5 or 6, an employee moves from using the phrase like you to we and us.
Yeah.
And that is a huge indicator, that little shift in language when they move to we. And you're like, all right, you've attached.
Yep.
You're starting to see your own personal identity, your own personal brand, your own personal worth as attached to our collective effort here. And that's a wonderful sign that they're starting to kind of like, find themselves in your culture.
Love it. I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Jonathan, we're winding down here for the show, but what's one other thing that you'd like for people to know that you think is a clear indicator of, how to build their culture into this place of, where it's comfortable, it's trusting, it's accountable, all those things. What would be the one thing you'd like people to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that companies that care about the safety of employees and that understand that safety is a broad idea. There's a lot of talk about psychological safety now. I also like companies that care about occupational health and safety as well. I just think that safety all around means that people can show up and do their very best work and perform at their absolute best. And mostly, that's actually what people want to do. They want to come to work and be successful. And if you can create the environment for that, I think that means you're creating a holistically safe environment. And anything you can do to do those things means that your employees will be able to be their best selves at work and deliver the best results for you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. One of the things Jen and I always talk about is, if you can get people to to be their best, then the company will be its best too, right?
100%.
And people just don't understand that. Jonathan, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so you can find me online at clearlythen.com. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, so I'm a real human. If you send me a DM and you want to spend some time with me as a coach, I'm always happy to give folks an hour to get to know them. So shoot me a DM. Love to meet you.
Cool. Love it. Love it. And I meant to ask you that earlier. Where did the name Clearly Then come from, by the way?
Yeah.
Well, it's a funny little origin story, super quick. I have been married to my wife for like 35 years, and we met in university. And when we did English, both of us, and we were writing lots and lots of essays. And we would, of course, want to go out at night, being young. And but we would always be pounding away on the essays. And one of us would say from one side of the apartment to the other, "Where are you at in yours?" And it would be, "Oh, I'm at clearly, then, which means I'm at the start of the last paragraph." And as I was launching this company, I was like, I'm at the start of the last paragraph of my career.
Love it.
And so
that's so good.
that's where it came from. It's
Oh,
just
I
kind of
love it.
goofy.
I
But
love it. I'm glad we got that in. I meant to ask that at the beginning and totally forgot. We
Fun.
stepped right into things. So, well, Jonathan, again, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate it. To all our listeners out there, as always, Jan and I love the feedback. Keep it coming. We're excited for the list of upcoming interviews that we have. So please keep an eye out for those social media posts and the emails and things of that nature. But until the next time, stay safe and be healthy.